So today I'm taking a look at the topic of what does being sex positive mean for our society, for religion, etc. And I'm really fortunate to have a good friend and in Davey Wavey. Davey is an American YouTuber who covers LGBT topics related to sex, relationship, coming out. And he uses this platform to cover some really important topics that are not covered as much in society. And so it's been great to connect with Davey about that and to watch his career develop over the years. So Davey, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
So I want to start out to give people a little bit of perspective about you. So can you tell us a little bit about your background in terms of realizing that you were gay and coming out and how that worked out for you?
Yeah, I first realized when I was growing up, I thought that everyone was like, every guy was attracted to other guys. And then probably around middle school, I realized that no, in fact, most of my friends were straight and that I was the one that was different. So then I went from thinking like everyone was gay to just that I was gay. And I really didn't have the terminology for it because we didn't have the internet like kids today have. Until like halfway through middle school, one of my mom's friends is a gay guy, and she introduced me to him, and she's like, now he has a husband because some boys marry other boys. And it like totally blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, I'm not alone. And it's this thing called being gay. But it took me a while to then really come out to myself and then come out to my family and friends. I came out when I was 17, which for me felt really young, but kids growing up today, I mean, they come out like that's like really taking your time. So it's a different world today, than the one I grew up in.
And, we could even go back further and say how much of a different world it was for me, because when I first had the feelings of attraction to other guys, I thought I was the only person in the world. I thought there was nobody else in the world. So things are changing. Did religion play any role in your upbringing at all? Did it, in terms of a positive or a negative influence?
Yeah, I was raised Catholic, so negative would be the short answer. When I came out, my parents actually sent me to the Catholic priest at our church, and he said to my parents, he's like, my only issue with your son claiming to be gay is that he's so unwilling to change. That I was so set in coming out in my identity, and he was hoping that I would, I guess, convert or I mean, it was. It took me 17 years to be as comfortable as I was to come out. And I think it gave me at that time a firm enough sense in who I was to be like, all right, look, I'm not going to try to change that. But I think like a lot of Catholic people, there's a certain level of shame that you get from hearing time and time again that the sex that you have is disordered. A lot of Catholics, they kind of try to talk out both sides of their mouth. It's like, well, hate the sin, not the sinner, or like being gay is fine. It's just gay sex that's an issue. And it's like, what the hell? Like, what are you talking about? Like, it like makes no sense. And, what I've come to realize as an adult is that my connections to other men, the sex that I have is ecstatic and joyful. It is a celebration of this body that God gave me. I feel more connected to, I think, what some people would call God when, I'm in the throes of an orgasm than I would sitting in the pew of some church that's judging me for who I am.
Yeah, I mean, a friend of mine wrote an article. He was Jim Atolsky was his name, and he was the pastor of our church in San Francisco. And he wrote an article saying that the time on this earth when we're the closest to God, the most closely aligned with a deep, deep spiritual experience is orgasm.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
And when you talk about the church being negative around our image of ourselves in terms of being gay, I had a really interesting situation a few years ago. I preached a sermon on healthy sexuality, 10 keys to healthy sex, mutual, honest, all that kind of stuff. And afterwards, a woman came up to me in the coffee hour and she said, Brent, I'm heterosexual. I'm married to a man. We were both Catholic. Every time we have sex, we feel guilty. I came to this church a year ago to hear something about positive sexuality. Why did I have to wait a year to hear it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, it's not just gay people, but also I think that there's some intention in that with the church that like, if when you're in the throes of, orgasmic ecstasy, you are so in touch with God or something, bigger than yourself, that part of me thinks that, maybe the church thought it in their best interest to really separate us from that like that power that we get from an orgasm, they wanted us to have to get through them.
Yep.
It kind of cuts out the middleman if you're using, sex as a prayer. And so I think that's probably part of the intention between really disconnecting people from their sexuality.
John Boswell was a professor at Yale, now deceased. He had HIV/AIDS and died, but he wrote a book called Christianity, Homosexuality, and Social Tolerance. And he looked at the first 1,000 years of the Christian church. And he said that during much of the early time in the Christian church, it was very positive towards gay and lesbian people and sex, right? But that around the year 1000, 1100, society began this whole dualistic thing, dividing everything into good and bad. Heaven became good, earth became bad, intellect became good, emotions became bad, male became good, female became bad. They kept doing all of this stuff. And in the process, sex became bad, and only for procreation. And when that happened, all of the playfulness, all gay sex was seen as being bad because it wasn't seen as procreative. Sex among seniors who couldn't procreate was seen to be bad. And so that began the whole sex negativity in society. Because we know in lots of traditions, I mean, you can go to Hindu temples where there are images of people having sex, male and female, male and male, all over the place in all kinds of positions in the temple. Right? So that sexuality has gone through periods of being celebrated by religion, but it has its damage too, certainly.
I think it is our most potent and powerful energy. I mean, literally, it is a life-giving, it's the ability to create life, like your sexual energy. It's a very powerful thing. And when we're disconnected from that, I think it hurts all of us.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what do you think it would mean to have a more sex positive society and to have religion to be more sex positive?
Yeah, I mean, this is like the bulk of the work that I do. Like this is why I have a YouTube channel. And it's funny because people often criticize my YouTube channel that like all I do is talk about sex. And I was like, well, I talk about sex on my YouTube channel as much as people think about sex in real life. Like it's a part of our life that takes a lot of energy and a lot of thought. It's something that's often on our minds. And when we treat it like it's this terrible, horrible thing, we're not being honest with ourselves. And I think with my YouTube channel, it's an attempt to kind of shift the conversation a little bit. I want people to be able to talk about their body in a way that is joyful and fun. And for me, like the best way to do that is to model it on camera, to infuse sexuality with joy. I think that we would have so many less issues about our bodies, issues of shame. I mean, I think that all of us are really carrying around this tremendous weight, and it would feel nice to have that just be a little bit lighter.
Yeah, I think that we have work to do in society around our laws. The church has work to do around its morals and stuff to shift, to be able to celebrate sexuality as a gift and to see it as a gift that can have a lot of other purposes besides procreation. And when we think about people who are disabled and how they're prevented from having any kind of healthy sexuality because of the ethical inappropriateness of institutions, and religion has a lot to do with that. I mean, it may not necessarily have created all of the problems, but it certainly can play a role in fixing it if it starts to look at sexuality as a gift from God and a gift not just for procreation.
Yeah, I think it's a ship that turns very slow when we think about religion, and it may take several lifetimes for that to happen. But we just filmed a project. I have an erotic website called Himeros.tv, and we work with different sex coaches on the videos that we film. So I mean, it's kind of like porn, but almost like porn with a message.
Yep.
And we filmed a series in Vermont with a former Catholic priest who now is a tantric instructor. And I think he was a Catholic priest for something like 16 years. And the whole project was based on religion. And we did the 7 sacraments of Catholicism reimagined as porn videos. So you can imagine, in baptism, the liquids that we used instead of the holy water, there were quite a few others. And part of it was reclaiming religious symbols, imagery, and narrative to incorporate it in our erotic experiences, to incorporate it into our sex, to ritualize, to look at our sex as something that is sacred. Because I think when we shame it, we kind of put it in this box as being this dirty thing that we sometimes do, rather than this celebration of who we are, celebration of being a human being in this body, a celebration of our connectedness to this planet, our connections to each other. That is a healthier, more fulfilling approach, but it takes bringing sex out of the shadows in order to experience that.
Yeah, I was mentioning to you before we turned to the recording on that I had brunch recently with some friends, and we get together a lot and have done so for years. And I was saying that I was going to be interviewing you, and that we're talking about what does a sex positive society, a sex positive church look like? And it started a whole conversation, and people started sharing secrets that they hadn't shared with their best friends, because we have that image of it's still the kind of thing we hide. Right, especially if we're on the edge on some things, if we're not in the mainstream, the old missionary position, which I think is kind of funny that they would phrase it that way. So how do you see that religion might play a more positive role in this shift? Because I do think that religion is challenged because we're stuck. We can be stuck with basing a lot of our beliefs on books written 2,000 years ago. The medical profession doesn't do that. The legal profession doesn't do that. The teaching profession doesn't do that, but religion does that. And so, and sometimes those books didn't quite understand a lot of the things today that we're wrestling with. So what do you think it might look like?
Yeah, listen, I think you have a lot more energy than I do in terms of like shifting the narrative, like within religious institutions. I went to a religious college, kind of like been there, done that. We tried to make change, nothing happened. I think that's an important fight to have. It's not my fight. For me, it's like, I'm not waiting for religion to get there. I'm encouraging people to reconnect their sex with spirituality, even on an individual level. Maybe eventually the church will get there. If they don't, like, fine, leave them in the dust, find a different church, find a place that does. But like what I know to be true for myself is like, it's interesting that as a Catholic, people told me that my sex was not procreative, because never do I feel more alive, never do I feel more enriched, like this life-giving energy, than when I'm having sex with another man. So, so for me, it's like, you don't need to wait for your church to get there. You can start reconnecting those dots for yourself. And there's plenty of great resources online. There's plenty of great coaches. The coach that I mentioned before, his name is Coach Nick. He has a body prayer ritual that connects your sexuality with, a connection it connects your sexuality to spirituality. And it reclaims a lot of religious imagery. And in fact, he calls his sex practice his ministry. So he's still using a lot of those words because he wants to reclaim it. So yeah, so it's a good fight to have. It's just not, it's just not my fight. Yeah, I'm too tired. I'm too tired.
I mean, I agree with you on an individual basis. It's really important for people to reclaim their sexuality and not let whatever views of their traditional church hold them back. Absolutely, and to redefine terms, etc. But I do think that because religion is doing so much damage, that those of us who are invested in trying to reform traditional religion need to do that. And the purpose of doing this vlog today was partly to get out a more positive, more sex positive message, but it was also to stir up a conversation, and I think it's going to stir up a conversation about religion needs to change. Religion needs to see sexuality as a gift, and a gift that can involve all kinds of play and all kinds of drama and all kinds of diversity, and for that to be celebrated. Like, I've often said that if there was a sermon in a church about masturbation and healthy masturbation and it being a gift, you'd have heart attacks with half the congregation. And
you totally would.
Yeah, and that's not the way it should be. I mean, your church should be a place where we can talk about all these things. And if you can't talk about something as important as sexuality in your faith community, then something's wrong. And so
Yeah.
you know,
Do you have, can I ask you this? Do you have, I know this is your interview, but do you have confidence that, I mean, like for the Catholic Church, for example, which still like won't ordain women, like, I mean, this is where they're at, right?
Yep.
Do you really think that it's possible to get like the Catholic Church to celebrate masturbation?
I think that I'm more concerned about trying to work bottom up and top down. And I don't mean that in terms
Yeah.
of sexual language, but I mean much more concerned about that local congregations, local clergy, local families can be changed. And
Sure.
It's ironic, around the gay issue, the demographic in North America that's consistently been the most gay positive are Catholics. Roman Catholics, because the church has done a good job of talking about social justice and poverty issues, et cetera. And it's done a good job of talking about the supremacy of conscience. And when they no longer have a hold over people, guess what? They practice it, right?
Mm.
And so Catholics, the first province in Canada to include sexual orientation in the Human Rights Code was Quebec, the most Catholic. The first state in the United States to do equal marriage was Massachusetts, the most Catholic. And most of the countries in the world that have moved the farthest, the fastest, are Catholic, predominantly Catholic countries. So I think that a lot can be done on the grassroots level, particularly when the church no longer has an authoritarian hold over people. So,
Yeah.
Part of what Rainbow Faith and Freedom is doing is how do we change hearts and minds so the average family will be safer and the local faith community will be safer. So, there are Roman Catholic churches all over the place where gay people feel welcome and they're not going to be, the priest is probably not going to march in the Pride Parade, but he will try to create a safe space locally. And so if we can make those kinds of changes, right, then I think that's important. And if we can empower people of faith to say, we want to talk about sex and we want to talk about it in our faith communities, and we don't want to be, hiding this stuff. And we want to be, people shouldn't have to choose between their spirituality and their sexuality, right? We're healthiest when they come together. And so that's what we're trying, changing denominational, rules and regulations from a top-down hierarchy, too long.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever they have the sacrament of masturbation, that's when I'll give it I'll reconsider. Like, all right.
Well, maybe you'll be called to preside at it or something, who knows?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to be the patron saint of power bottoms. I might get canonized someday.
So young people of faith who are wrestling with the church's position, from what I hear from you, is either find a new church or a different place or a different faith community that's more accepting, but don't wait. In the meantime, there's lots out there to help you to have a personal, more positive attitude towards sexuality.
Yeah, but I also, to me, that's like such a cop out, because there's so many people who are like, their religion is inseparable from their friends, their family. If you're a Mormon or, a Jehovah's Witness, whatever, leaving your church and going to a new church means saying goodbye to everyone that you know and you love.
Yeah.
I get that. Just to say, find a new church, it's a great soundbite, but it doesn't address the complexity of the issue for a lot of people.
Yep.
So I think this is where the internet is really powerful, that you can connect online to communities of people like yourself. You can find YouTube channels, you can find personalities, you can find other people and connect. Organizations like the work that you're doing. There's a lot of support out there for people who aren't able to or aren't ready to quite jump ship and switch to a different church.
Yep. I think in the 12-step movement, they say, pick the best and leave the rest. And I think with religion, people need to do that as well. Be able to pick what works for them about religion and ignore the rest. Anyway. Thank you for today, and thank you for the really, really important work that you're doing. So if you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to our channel. It's free to subscribe and it helps us a lot. And don't forget to check out Davey Wavey's links in the description below. Davey, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure being here.